Mr. Chairman, did you say that I was a solicitor?
Yes.
No, that let me start with a correction. I have been a plasterer, a fireman in the railway, a firefighter, in the Royal Navy, and all sorts of other things. Never, never, never to the elevated height of being a solicitor. Mr. Chairman and ladies and gentlemen, there are three verities that dictate international relations: geography, state interests, and spheres of influence. And it's on the basis of state interests that I'm going to explain to you why Scotland will leave the Union with England and change our relationship with Europe, with diplomacy playing a part, but also noting in passing that the political disengagement will in no way upset what we call the social union. That is intermarriage, families north and south of the border, shared broad culture, differences but nevertheless broad culture, and political and democratic values. That is the social union. Scotland at present has no role or influence in European economic trade or defence policies. Yet we are important. We are NATO's unsinkable aircraft carrier, able through air power to interdict any adversary coming through the North Sea into the Atlantic sea lanes. And of course, they are extremely important in times of difficulty between Europe and North America. We accommodate one of NATO's nuclear bases at Faslane in the West Coast. And now that the Arctic has joined the Atlantic and the Pacific as geopolitical areas of strategic importance to the great powers, our geography invites the interests of others. We are in NATO's sphere of influence. We are in America's sphere of influence. And so us, where we are geographically, makes our position vis-a-vis the Atlantic one of the areas where spheres of influence impose their policies upon us. Scotland's oil reserves have this week brought into sharp focus the different interests of Scotland and the United Kingdom. This is the headline in the English Daily Telegraph, where the leader of the opposition says, "We will drill the North Sea dry." Now, that is a demonstration of the difference between Scottish and United Kingdom interests. In United Kingdom interests, population over 60 million, in fiscal difficulty, it is extremely important to get any resource that carries financial income into your hands. And so from a United Kingdom Treasury point of view, getting the North Sea production down to the point where there's none left is extremely important. But for a small state of 5.4 million people, that is an entirely different proposition. And I'll give you an example. If we had 60 euros here, and we said we're going to divide that 60 euros by 60 people, everybody gets €1. But suppose we divide the 60 euros by 5 people, everybody gets €12. And you can apply that equation to the North Sea oil. For 5 million people, its production and the longevity of the production is far more important than it is for a country with 60 million people. It's a long-term resource for us. It's a short-term bonus for the United Kingdom. That is our, at the moment, locked-in, impotent position. which will not change until Scotland exercises sovereign powers to assert our own state interests, command our own resources, and decide where to place ourselves in relation to alliances in Europe and the wider NATO alliance. Scotland joined with England in 318 years ago in 1707. And this is where state interests came into play. Scotland was in a poor economic condition, made worse after the fiasco and financial disaster of what's called the Darien expedition, where we tried to set up a colony in Panama, selling cloth bonnets to the Indian people in Panama. It failed, and Scotland became almost insolvent. England had a state interest. We had the same monarch, but England's state interest was different from ours. England's state interest was to close the border, take Scotland out of being the proxy from its main opponent, France, at that particular time, and also have an additional bonus of gaining strategic territory and people. It was, in fact, necessity. Now, a number of people in Scotland, even today, bitterly resent 1707. It's best encapsulated by the poet from our national poet, Robert Burns, where the allegation was bribery. Bought and sold for English gold, a parcel of rogues in the nation. That's emotional. What I'm saying to Scots today is forget the emotion. Look at state interests. 1707 has been reversed. It is Scotland which, because of our massive energy resources, we have oil and gas in the North Sea, the Clare field off the west of Shetland. Our land is being covered by wind turbines, and so is the sea. We don't own a cupful of the oil, and we don't own one wind turbine. So in our state interest, that is our position in the United Kingdom. It is in our state interest to change that power equation and take sovereignty and disengage from the political relationship with England. And 1707 is different now. It was reenacted in the Scottish referendum in 2014. What people like me were told is you have to stay in the United Kingdom. Small 5 million Scotland has to shelter under the umbrella of the powerful economic United Kingdom. And you dare not leave because you are inherently weak and it is inherently strong. Better together was the campaign slogan at that time. Well, it's better apart is a better slogan now, because Scotland is no longer inherently weak with the energy resources we have. But if you look at the state of the United Kingdom, it is laden with debt. It is in a trench of debt it cannot get out of. I'll give you some figures. The Office of Budget Responsibility gave its first estimate of government borrowing for 24-25 as £87 billion. Then it revised it to 127 billion, well short of the actual borrowing requirement of 148 billion. The Debt Management Office, which sells UK debt, aims to borrow £299.3 billion in the current financial year. The formally acknowledged national debt is 2.7 trillion. If you factor in the off-the-book stuff, like liabilities for public service pensioners, the debt is nearer £4.3 trillion. The United Kingdom is, as was described by the English Tory Daily Telegraph, a poor country pretending to be rich. It lives on an international credit card, and if you look at the 10-year and 30-year bonds, the price of that credit card is rising exponentially. Now, this audience might say, that's a bit rough, a bit unfair, that after all, we have been together for 3 seen building the trade union movement, the socialist movement, all in that 318 years. Is that not something worth holding on to? Well, if you're emotional, the answer is yes. If you live in... No. England, unlike... to disengage politically pray and aid the great English statesman Lord Palmerston, who had no truck whatsoever with nostalgia, or he was plain as could be. Only interests, and it's those interests that will carry my nation to its independence.